Well, it's been a critical week in the impeachment inquiry as the public phase officially kicked off. House Democrats released the transcripts for 8 of their closed-door depositions. They included several State Department and White House officials who lawmakers all view as crucial to their investigation into President Trump. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff also announced the first public hearings in the inquiry. Bill Taylor and George Kent will appear on Wednesday. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Marie Yovanovitch is scheduled to testify on Friday. I want to bring in CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cortez. So, Nancy, this week, House Democrats released the transcripts of depositions from 8 officials. What would you say was really the theme that emerged from these transcripts?
Well, there's a great deal of overlap among these transcripts, and, the details are very consistent. Many of them describe witnessing, or in some cases, being involved with this pressure campaign on Ukrainian officials, explaining to those officials that they were going to need to embrace investigations into the origins of the 2016 campaign and into Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden if they wanted to secure both a meeting with the president and if they wanted to get U.S. aid to Ukraine flowing again. So you had people really on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean, both at the White House here in Washington and in Ukraine, saying that they saw the pieces of this quid pro quo coming together. And in one case, Gordon Sondland saying point blank that he helped deliver that message to the Ukrainians themselves. And then multiple White House officials saying they saw him deliver that message. So there really doesn't seem to be any dispute. Beyond that, we're starting to see a picture come together that really directly refutes what some key White House officials have said. For instance, we've just gotten testimony from Fiona Hill and Alex Vindman, who both say that, contrary to Mick Mulvaney's assertions, that they were told that he was involved in establishing this quid pro quo having to do with the Bidens. You'll recall that Mulvaney went to the White House podium in the briefing room and said that all of this had nothing to do with the Bidens. So you've got one story from the president and his top allies, and another story from a lot of these witnesses.
So this week, it was also notable, not just for the people who showed up, but those who didn't show up. John Bolton, Mulvaney, a few Office of Management and Budget officials also failing to appear. And yet you've got House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, who went ahead and scheduled these public hearings. Is there an increasing sense of confidence from the majority at this point?
I think there's an increasing sense that they need to get moving, and that while they don't have everything that they want, that they have enough, and that they have to move on to the public hearing phase of this investigation if they want to have a chance to wrap this up by the new year. They really don't want to have this drag on and on. It feeds this notion that Republicans have pushed that Democrats are focused solely on impeachment and nothing else. So, yes, they would absolutely have loved to hear from John Bolton and several other key officials, but if it means getting engaged in a long and dragged out court fight in order to do it, it looks like they're willing to cut their losses and move on to these public hearings.
So, Nancy, what would you say is the strategy for Republican lawmakers as they shift into next week in these public hearings?
Well, what's been interesting, Rena, is how little the Republican rank and file have had to say about all this. Yes, you do hear day after day from a small cadre of the president's top defenders, but it's not as if the party by and large is rushing to the microphones to defend this president or declare his innocence. A lot of Republicans are keeping their heads down. They're opting not to have to weigh in if they don't absolutely have to. It's a sign of just how uncomfortable a lot of Republicans are with a lot of the facts that have emerged from these depositions. Now, does that mean that Republicans believe that this president should be impeached over it? No. And Republicans will certainly argue that while it wasn't the greatest, they don't believe that it's an impeachable offense. But the president would like them to go even further than that and say that he did nothing wrong. And frankly, that is just something that a lot of Republicans are not willing to do.
And what will you be watching for, Nancy? I know you're in the weeds with all these different testimonies, but what will you be watching for during the public hearings on Wednesday and Friday?
Well, Democrats have really pumped up the nature of the witnesses that they have chosen to go first. They say that they're incredibly compelling, obviously very experienced, that they have decades of foreign policy experience under their belts, and that when they speak before the American people, that the public is going to be incredibly impressed and is going to come away with a deep understanding of what went wrong here. So it'll be interesting to see, first off, whether Republicans try to go after their credibility. That could be a very risky strategy. And also whether Democrats really succeed in very clearly and succinctly laying out for the American people the sequence of events, and whether that causes a shift in public opinion. Because as of right now, when you look at the polls, the American public is about 50-50 when it comes to impeachment and removal from office.
Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Rena.